All right, I think we're up. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Bo Jansen. I'm the education lead here at Gnomon for the visual effects program, and I'll be your host for tonight's live stream. Before I introduce our presenter here this evening, I want to share a little bit about Gnomon, who we are, and some ways you can get into contact with us. So Gnomon is a 3D art college focused on visual effects, animation, and the game art industry, educating in those different fields. We offer both full-time degree programs as well as individual courses you can take. We also have a foundation in art and design program we call FIAD. That's to get sort of your feet into the door, your foundations in these basic design skills and intro into 3D. And there's still time to enroll in a full-time program, individual classes, or the FIAD program for our fall term. You can go to our website, gnomon.edu/academics, and look into registration for a summer term for individual classes. Say it's currently now open. You can check out that URL. And we offer both on-campus classes available online. They run from beginner to advanced level, the full spectrum of program. And also, you will see that all of the instructors are industry leaders in their fields. We have people such as Alex here, who are the people you want teaching these classes. So they help really leverage their expertise to our curriculum. And finally, if you are an art educator or know someone who is, there's still a few spots open for our Unreal Engine Professional Development Workshop. That's happening July 13th and 14th. If you go to our website, gnomon.edu/UnrealProDev. So that's going to be a 2-day workshop for educators, getting you into Unreal Engine, so you can get up to speed with that and introduce Unreal then into your own program. So you can go to gnomon.edu/UnrealProDev and learn more and register for the program. So for tonight's event, we're excited to have Alexander Lee here joining us. So Alexander has been working in the game and VFX industries since 2012. He has contributed to it as a senior technical artist, animator, and sculptor on projects for Apple, Survios, Pure Imagination, and Proco, on projects including Alien Rogue Incursion, Alien Descent, and The Walking Dead Onslaught. He also is a teacher for 2 of Gnomon's classes. He teaches Gnomon's Intro to Scripting with Maya class and Scripting with Python classes. And throughout the stream, we'll be sharing a discount code if you want to register for one of Alex's amazing classes. We have a discount code for the summer term, which we'll put up on the screen here. Those classes begin the week of July 6th. I'm very biased, but I've sat in on Alex's classes. They are amazing. I think he does an amazing job. He's the reason, I think part of the reason why Gnomon is as amazing as it is because you have not just amazing students, but we have these amazing teachers. So that's my proud papa moment for Alex. Sorry, I'll stop gushing. But let me give a little bit about his background. So we already told you about his background. Let's see. Also, we want to thank our sponsors for the event, Dell and NVIDIA, for their continued support for our community and these industry events. Without them, we would not be able to offer these amazing free artist talks to you. So thank you to Dell and NVIDIA. And if you need closed captioning, you can head over to the Gnomon YouTube or Facebook channels for closed captioning. So let's get this started up. Alex, thank you for being here. I hand it off to you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you for the intro, Bo, and thanks, Gnomon, for hosting. Also appreciate the kind words about my classes. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get started. So just allow this. All right. So can everyone see my presentation here? You guys can just give a thumbs up in the chat. You can see it here on screen. Looks good. All right. Okay, cool. So what we're going to talk about today is Claymation in ZBrush. So this is kind of a new animation style that I have developed using ZBrush as a sculpting tool on every frame of the animation. So kind of doing an independent sculpt on every separate frame. And I want to use this as an example to kind of get into the details about how you can use scripting to really improve your workflow as an artist. So like my background, primarily, I was interested in art. I wanted to do sculpting, I wanted to do animation, I want to make my own short films, and I'm continuing to still do that throughout. But I found that coding and technical art is just this incredible benefit as an artist, and that became a large part of my career. So let's get into it here. All right. So we're going to be, again, talking about using ZBrush to sculpt on every frame of the animation. And to really enable this, we're using primarily Maya scripting. So we're going to be doing scripting in Python to kind of set this up. So I'm not going to go over the details of how to actually do the Python scripting. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of that first, and then we'll get straight into the actual workflow using ZBrush. So, all right. So first of all, what is scripting? Scripting is basically giving instructions to the computer to do a task for you, so you don't have to do it yourself. So this can be as simple as just exporting a bunch of assets out to your hard drive so that you can then import them into a game engine. It could be things as complicated as basically setting up an entire character rig. But all of these things that you can do by hand, we just want to be able to go run through those in a script. It does all of them one by one automatically. We don't have to worry about that. And in my classes, I teach this primarily using Maya. So built-in Maya kind of functions that we already have that we use every day as animators, as modelers. We can basically script and automate those. So, and also in terms of just terminology, scripting versus coding. Scripting really refers specifically to just giving instructions to existing features of a software. In this case, it's Maya. That's what we're going to be doing here. Whereas coding is more refers to everything, including building software from scratch. You might hear coding and programming kind of interchangeably, and you can do both with Python. All of the techniques that I teach for Python can be used to build software from scratch as well that you can just run straight off your desktop. But in this case, we're going to be focusing on running stuff directly in Maya. So I'm going to bring up Maya first. So I want to just show you, if you haven't done this before, what it looks like to write a simple script. So if I open up the script editor, I'm just going to clear this. I'm going to go ahead and clear these tabs as well. So I just clicked on this little icon down in the lower right of Maya to bring up the script editor. And if you can't see it, I know my face might be in the way there. You can also go to Windows, General Editors, and it's right here as well. So I'm using a plugin called Charcoal Editor 2. I'd recommend you looking this up. It's a really helpful kind of just alternate interface for the script editor. But if you have the default one, that works just the same way. It will be totally fine as well. So we have this up. And the cool thing about Maya is that anytime we run through, as I was saying, any of the features that we're using, and I'm going to do something extremely boringly simple here. I'm going to create a sphere, and then I'm going to move it up, and we'll also scale it. I actually want it to be right on the ground plane, so we'll put it right there. So we'll see in the output here in our script editor, there's like a record of every single thing that has happened. So this is happening in the background all the time. So this is happening whether or not you're aware of it. And this is a really nice record of what happened. It's like a history of the commands used. So if we just copy each of these lines down here, just going to paste each of these. These are lines of Mel code. Mel is the language that was built for Maya. If I just go ahead and delete my sphere, and I run this script, you can see it did all of those steps again. We have our sphere, we brought it up, we scaled it up, and we also moved it again one last time to get it on the ground plane. So this is our completed script. This is amazing. We can sell this online, make lots of money. But no, this is very simple, but you can kind of see where you could go with this, right? You can do whatever you want. You could do lots of things, including like exporting files to the disk. You can keep track of that here as well. If I go in here, if I set like keyframes, Set a keyframe on these. You're seeing that output as well, setting keyframes. So this can be a really good starting point for making scripts. And that's as much as I'm going to show that, but just so you can get a sense of how easy it is to set that up. And I'll show you how we can do that here in Python as well. Same thing, just a slightly different way of writing these things. So commands dot polysphere, we're going to do that. We're going to move it up, let's say like 3 on the y-axis, and then we'll also scale it up. So we'll just delete the sphere, run that. You can see we have that working now in Python as well. You've always wondered what that corner icon was. Yep, that's what it is. And it is helpful just to get a sense of kind of what's happening as you're working in Maya. You can also think of this, if you've ever played a video game where you can like create a macro, you can string together a bunch of different attacks, for example, and then run them all at once. This is the same exact idea. These are our attacks. We're just running them all together. This is our macro. And you can really build out a lot of stuff just with this same kind of idea. Okay, so I'm just going to hop back to the presentation here. So some uses for scripting. Primarily in my career, I create Maya workflow tools. So I've created a lot of auto rigging tools, for example. So if you imagine you have a bunch of characters that are all similar proportions, they're all humanoids in a game, you need to create a character rig for each one. So you need to place the skeleton joints. You need to create animation controls. You need to add IK and FK. There's a lot of details that go into making a good animation rig, and it's a very time-consuming process. It doesn't make sense to have to do that entire process by hand every single time. So this is something where it's great to write a Python script. It runs through all the setup steps. The artist just places exactly where the joints should be, and then it does everything else. And saves a ton of time and makes it so that the rigging artists can focus on actually, working on the weight painting, making sure everything's really polished. And if there's any changes, for example, to the character model, if there's a change in proportion, for example, on the arm, you just place a new joint location, regenerate the rig, and you're good to go. So I've done a lot of that. I've also worked on animation tools. So anything for rapidly exporting a bunch of animations to a game engine, for example, and also just managing art assets. So it's useful for that. You could also do things like if you are constantly having to set up the same shader network, if you're using V-Ray, and every single time you need all the same nodes, just plug in the textures, run your script, build out all of the shader nodes, and then you're good to go. And that will save you a lot of time as well. And one of my students, Anthony Alvarez, made a script for exactly that, and he uses it all the time, and it's really helpful. So those are some of kind of the cases for using Maya scripting. You can also use scripting in other apps like Houdini, Unreal, and Unity. Houdini and Unreal both support Python for pipeline scripts, but they do use other languages like Vex and C++ for other things. So in my view, scripting should be fully in support of creativity of the artist. So you may have heard a lot about AI recently. This is not the type of coding we're talking about here. We're talking about writing tools that will really make the artist, make it easier for the artist to focus on their craft. So like the idea is that the artist is spending the most time possible with the actual pen in their hand using the tablet. So if they're sculpting, they're going to be sculpting. If they're creating textures, maybe they're doing texture painting. If they're animating, I personally use a pen tablet for animation as well. But basically, the minimal amount of time spent on all of the other junk that's involved in doing 3D art, like anything with exporting file names, getting things in the right places in your folder structure, things like that should be handled by the tools. So again, two main uses I see for scripting to that end is basically to automate boring and repetitive tasks. So anything, again, that's super repetitive, like rigging characters. But also you can enable new art techniques. So the tools don't do what you want, you can expand on them. So I'm going to get into that here. So you can basically adapt the tools to do new things. And the case that I'm going to show you in this demo is, again, ZBrush Claymation. So creating some scripts that will just help us to get all of our frames of animation into ZBrush, essentially. So and when I first kind of got into, well, when I first got into art in general, I was actually making stop motion with Legos. So that was kind of my entry point into animation, and that's kind of stuck with me. And as I got more into digital art, I really enjoyed ZBrush. I enjoyed the flexibility of sculpting, freeform, doing like gesture sculpts in pose. You can have really nice elongated shapes. You can have, if you have like different parts of the body that are touching, like if you have an arm alongside the torso, you can just kind of merge those objects and get a really nice crease sculpted there. And a lot of that stuff I found was hard to maintain once I got into the animation pipeline. So my idea was kind of, how can I start sculpting every single frame? And it's also inspired, of course, by 2D animation. So I have some examples here. In 2D animation, we don't have motion blur. You just have the entire frame drawn by hand. So you can see, to create the effect of motion blur, there's this really nice smear frame here where the arm is really separated into all these different pieces. Also a nice dry brush effect to smear that form across. And also another kind of an alternate technique here where the entire form is really cleanly drawn, but then we have a bunch of duplication of all his eyeballs and his noses. So yeah, I wanted to get some of that stuff into my 3D animation as well. So let me give you some examples of the work I've done with this, just to give you a sense of what we're going for here. So this is an animation I made for the Gnomon workshop. I go into a bunch of details on how to do this in the workshop. And then a bunch of these other ones are just personal work over the years. So you can see lots of forms tearing, lots of exaggeration. When things are moving quickly, there's smear frames. Also, when things are merging together, you really see that interaction, and I can sculpt the transition between the different things. And here, I mean, this object is completely connected with the head is completely connected to the floor plane object there. All right, so that's kind of the idea. And I can close that. So I want to go ahead and show you the first step of kind of doing this process. So we're just going to start fully in ZBrush, because like scripting is really never the first step for me. First of all, I'm just thinking about a workflow that I'd like to do, kind of doing it by hand. Oftentimes it's kind of laborious to do by hand, and then figuring out how the script can just speed that up. So let's open up ZBrush here. All right, so my first kind of thought here was just to use subtools as animation frames. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab a sphere. I'm just going to place this here, make Polymesh 3D from this. And if you open up subtool stack here, you can see I have my subtool. I'm going to rename it frame_1. And this will be my first animation frame. Okay, so what I can do is to basically just sculpt on this. And anytime I want a new frame, I'm just going to duplicate it. So this is my frame 1. I can just do Control-Shift-D. You can see that makes a duplicate, and it also renames this really nicely to frame 2. So I can go in here, I can move this over. Probably also use my snake hook brush. Just have kind of a quick brush select menu. And start to go into this. All right, so this will be my second frame. Maybe this is a little bit too much. And then to actually kind of flip between these, I'm just going to go into solo mode. So let's turn on solo. And I can go up and down on my subtool stack using these up and down arrows. You can also use up and down arrow keys on your keyboard. But personally, I prefer to set hotkeys for these. So I set A and D for up and down. It's just kind of nicely under my hand. I use Q for brush, W for gizmo, and so it just works really nicely right there. All right, so we can just do Control and Alt, and then click on that, and we can set a hotkey. Let's press A, and then we'll do that for this one as well. So we'll press D. Okay, so A and D, I can hop between my keyframes, and then I can continue sculpting on these. So I'll do another Control-Shift-D. Pull this over here. And if anyone has questions, please feel free. I do see the chat here. I know I was going through a little bit quickly. Okay, so let's kind of hop between these. I'm using A and D to just flip through. It's like a flip book. And I also don't want the resolution to be this high. So I think I'm going to go in with Sculptress. So you can turn this on right here. And all the options are under Stroke and Sculptress Pro. I have my kind of custom menu set up here where I dragged different interface elements into here. So I'm going to be using this. That's where you can find it. All right. So with Sculptress on, it's just going to dynamically kind of change my resolution. So I really don't need too much resolution for this. This is a simple object. If I ever needed to add more, I can just increase it later. But I want this to be pretty low res. Just going to do this again. I know I started with a boring sphere example for my scripting, and I'm starting with a boring sphere for Claymation, but don't worry, we'll get into something that looks a little bit more interesting in just a second here. All right, so I'm hopping through, and I can start to get some nice motion on this. I'll make one more. I'll move this further along. So question, would morph targets and layers work for this? They would. It could be really good for making blend shapes, for example. You can do some really nice blend shape animation in ZBrush using layers. But it doesn't allow you to change the geometry, which is what I'm doing here. So each of these different meshes is actually very different in terms of topology, right? So I can even like split it apart, and you can't do that with a morph target. So comment, intro to Gnomon, intro to sculpting in Maya is in a class. Yeah, it's actually intro to scripting in Maya. That's my intro class for Python scripting. Okay, so let's see. It's probably lost too much volume there. I'm just going to inflate. Okay, so that's good enough. This is just a first test. So you can see we can get some animation. If I hold down D and A, you can also kind of flip through. So I want to actually get this to play back in Maya. So if I go ahead and export this, export to here, see FBX. All right, so I'm just going to export that FBX, and in the options, make sure I have all selected. So if we had only selected, it would only grab this current subtool. We want all of them. And question says, let's say you wanted to slightly change the shape of the original sphere by adding a nose or something. Does this workflow mean you'd have to add that nose to each frame? It does, and that would be something I'd recommend doing. So if you want a more complicated animation, I would take it from Maya, and I'll show you that technique in a minute. But if you did want to add on once the animation is already here in ZBrush, then yeah, you'd have to go through and add those. Something you can actually do, which is very helpful, is also create scripts in ZBrush. And I'm not going to really get into that too much today, but you could append the nose to each one and merge it down using a Z script, and you could pretty rapidly add that in. But yeah, if you wanted to have a nose on your character, I'd recommend starting with it before the animation starts. Okay, so, and also if you wanted the nose to just grow out of the sphere, for example, you could do that, and then you could continue to duplicate the mesh on from there, and it would still have that feature, and you could continue to kind of animate it. Okay, so let's export this. this is the FBX. I want to go ahead and go into Maya now, and I want to be able to render this. So let's just close our scripting editor. We'll go ahead and import. So this is going to be this first anim FBX. Okay, so the good thing about importing FBX from ZBrush is that each subtool is its own mesh with the name corresponding to the subtools. So this is really convenient. I'm just going to assign a, let's see, just a Lambert. And this is not going to be too helpful though for actually playing back an animation though, right? This is just a static blob. So any ideas in the chat about how I could do this? And I know I think I have some former students in the chat, so you guys might already know this. If you want to shout that out, you're welcome to. But what could we do here to actually get this to play back as an animation with these separate meshes? Let's see if there's any ideas. And if there aren't, I'll go ahead and show you the next step here. So we want this to be able to actually show up essentially one by one, right? Okay, so yeah, so exactly, there it is. Set visibility each frame. So we don't want them all visible. We want only one visible, one at a time. And we can use keyframes for that. Okay, so first of all, and another one, yeah, change the visibility attribute on each model over time. Exactly. Okay, so yeah, so exactly. Set key on the visibility. So we're going to add a keyframe for frame 1 on 1. Go to frame 2, grab frame 2, set a keyframe on that one. And frame 3, we will set keyframe on that one as well. So already, like, I have a very low amount of patience with stuff like this. So already I'm thinking like this is definitely not what I want to be doing manually. This should be scripted, but we'll just go ahead and set this up manually. Okay, so let's just make sure. Also, this is error prone, right? Like if I select the wrong mesh and put it on the wrong keyframe, it wouldn't work. So another place where it would be helpful to just script this. But okay, so we have frame 1, frame 2, just making sure these are all keyed on the correct frames, and that looks fine. All right, so to make sure that they actually are turned off to begin with, I want to go to frame 0. Let's take all of these and key them off. All right, so now we go to frame 1. We have this one, frame 2, and so on. So we are seeing a little bit of motion, but this is not exactly what I want. I want each of them visible only once. So frame 1 needs to be turned off on frame 2. The first mesh, that is, needs to be turned off on frame 2. So let's take this, go to frame 2, and we'll key the visibility off. Same here, frame 2 needs to be turned off on frame 3. Frame 3 needs to be turned off on frame 4, and so on. And we'll leave frame 5 on screen. That's totally fine. Okay, so now we can go through the frames, and this is working just as it did in ZBrush. And we can actually play this back. I need to change this FPS setting. I don't want it to be 30 FPS. We'll just go in here. Keep keys at current frames. We want to leave that on. Just change this to 12 FPS and save. And we'll set the first frame to 1. And we'll just take a look at how this is playing back. All right, so that's working just fine. And you could render these out. Works just like any other mesh. You can assign materials to these. You could do vertex colors. You could even assign UVs and texture each of these individually. I don't know if I'd recommend that. Personally, I use Polypaint and ZBrush to get the colors on my animations. But this is the basic idea. So you can pretty easily see, I think, how it would have been nicer to just have a script to set that up, right? So we bring in the meshes, and then we just set keyframes on visibility for those on each of the correct frames. And if you look in the output, you can see a lot of what we were doing there. Set adder frame 1.visibility to 0. That was when we were turning it off on the frame 1 mesh. So you just kind of take a record of each of these steps, turn it into your script, and then you're good to go. And setting up a script for something like this is actually not that difficult. You can get into it pretty quickly. We were able to do stuff like this only in the first couple of weeks in my class. But it enables, like a whole new technique. So there's a lot of power in knowing just a little bit of scripting. All right, so again, this is not ideal to have to do it by hand. I'd want a script. Also, if you wanted to retime this, if I wanted it to kind of go a little bit slower at the beginning, I'd have to select all the meshes and go in here, right click keys and add in between. Let's say we'll add 2 to this one, and we'll add 1 to this one as well. So keys add in between. Basically, I'm just making it so that the first mesh is on screen longer, and then the second mesh is on screen a little bit longer than 1 frame, but not quite as long as the other one. So the first one is on 3s. It has 3 frames. Second one is on 2s. It has 2 frames, and the rest are on 1s. And this is a kind of a standard technique in hand-drawn animation for changing timing. All right, so you can see how that works there. And I would want to have a script for adjusting the timing as well, so I don't have to be so careful to select all the meshes and make sure I'm putting the in-between in the right place and everything. That's a good place to also use a script. All right, so this is working for this simple object. We got it directly out of ZBrush. But if you have ever used posing tools in ZBrush, you know that it is a little difficult to do things that are complicated. So if we go in here, so let's take like super average man. So let's say I had an actual full character and I want to animate this. So I can go in with the gizmo and let's clear that. I can mask just the arm. I can rotate this down. I didn't really do that correctly. Let's do this again. So we can rotate that down. We could also do things like if we go in with the quick polygroup brush, we can add a polygroup to each of these arms. Go into our gizmo, control and click on this to mask it really quickly. Kind of pose that again. So I wanted to move this guy's arm up in the animation. I can duplicate this and start to move it more and more. Let's just fix that a little bit. So we can get this animation on through these poses in ZBrush, but it's going to be painful. You can set up nice polygroups. You can, if you have a slightly higher res mesh, the masking will work a little bit better with the gizmo as well. But it's not ideal, and it's certainly not like having a full character rig with IK and everything else. So this isn't really how I want to do it if I want to do full character animation, but I want to end up sculpting on each frame in ZBrush. So really, I want to start in Maya and then bring that over to ZBrush for the second step. So I'm going to show you that now. And again, let me know if you have any questions at any point. I am rushing through this a little bit just so we can get to the full ZBrush demo. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions. So let's open my scene. All right. So here is my my character rig in Maya. So if I go over here, I have kind of a control picker UI. So I can select these controls more easily, and we can easily select like FK controls for the neck, for the spine. We have IK controls for the hand, so we can move this around in space. This is something you certainly can't do in ZBrush, so you can pose this easily. And I have this mask attached to this guy's face, and it's actually driving the hands. So let me show you kind of what we're going for with this animation first. So this is kind of the end result we're going for. We have each of these individual frames, and thank you, Sleem. And you need the magic script. The magic script, yeah, we don't have the magic script on screen yet, so we'll have to wait for that. All right, so this is kind of what we're going for with the animation. These are separate frames I sculpted in ZBrush, starting from this My Animation, and I have a little bit of a GIF here, kind of going through those frames as well. See what's happening. In terms of kind of the inspiration for this animation, I've been really interested in samurai masks recently. I have a PureF file here, and I've also always been really interested in African tribal masks. So I have some of these here. I just think they're really expressive. And this idea of, I guess, with the samurai, they're kind of like hiding their identity and their actual facial expression, and they just have this really scary and aggressive looking mask to intimidate their opponents. And yeah, I just love these African tribal masks as well. Lots of different elements, so many different kind of material types. And yeah, so those are some of the inspirations. Also, I loved Lego Bionicles growing up, and they have this concept of masks of power that each of the characters wear, and if they don't have it, they're kind of like disabled, like they don't have their power anymore, they don't have any energy. And I always thought that was a cool design that all of those masks had, so that was also another inspiration. Question, just 5 frames? Yeah, so I just have 6 frames on this animation, and to keep it relatively simple for the demo, and you can get some kind of nice looking motion with only 6 frames like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. So I have my animation in Maya, and you can see things are kind of intersecting here. I'd like to have some interaction between the face and the mask, and I'd like to clean up things like this. We have this kind of weird, yeah, Bionicles, exactly, they're the best. Have this kind of weird seam here, which I could fix with a blend shape, but I prefer to just fix this in ZBrush as well. All right, so this is our animation, and to get it to go to ZBrush, all we really need to do is to select each of the meshes on each frame. We're going to duplicate that on parent, and we need to merge these 2 meshes together, and that will be our frame. So we'll go to, let me just, as an example, I'll go to one that's later on here. I'll select these 2, duplicate, and unparent, and I'll hide my original rigged mesh, and you can see what that looks like. So these are our 2 frames, and we just need to export those to an FBX to bring them into ZBrush. So you can do it by hand. I don't recommend it. It's a little bit annoying, especially if you have a longer animation to do all of this duplication. So we're going to use my script for that. All right, so just deleting those. I'm going to take this guy and my Ultra Clay script. Again, this is something I go into more detail in my Gnomon workshop about how to use this. That basically is just taking these 2 meshes. Just want to store these. And then I want to say how long the animation should be. So I had frames 1 through 6. Let's put that in here as well. And then we're going to export that. So it's going to do the same process, duplicate, merge the objects, rename them, and then it will export to FBX. So let's do that right now. Just click export. It's going through the frames. All right, so this is just kind of a standard warning when you do an FBX export. And we can go now to ZBrush, and I'm just going to import that. So I go to my Ultra Clay folder. From maya.fbx, that is what we just exported. Here it says at 743, so we'll just import that. And you can see what happens is it imports each of those meshes as a separate subtool. The script also named them nicely here, U-frame, 001 through 6, and we can kind of pop through those right here in ZBrush. So it's really as simple as that to get it into ZBrush using the script. Okay, so let me set up a material. I have a material that kind of matches the poly paint a little bit better, how it will look in the render. Also, for the sake of the stream, I think I'll turn up the lights a little bit just to make it easier to see. So let's turn this up to like 1.5 or so. Okay, so we have all of our separate subtools. We can go between these. Again, I'm using A and D on the keyboard to swap between them. And then I'll start sculpting this. So the first thing I really want to do is to fix some of these issues. I'll turn off Sculptress for now. Like I have this crease here on the hand, and I'll just take clay buildup, start to fill that in. So I'll just fill it in right there. And that mesh is still a little bit separated. But that's okay. We'll merge it at a later stage. So we'll do that. Let's fill this one in as well. And you might think you'd end up with some like boiling artifacts as you go between frames if you're correcting this frame by frame. But in my experience, it usually looks pretty good. I'm trying to keep on model just kind of visually. So I missed this one. I need to fix this. So fill in there as well. Okay, there we go. So that's the last one. Fill that in. Okay, so I fixed that. Also, if I want to make any changes to kind of like the position of these parts, it would be nice to have polygroups. So on each frame, I can just, first of all, I can look at my polygroups if I do Shift F. And then I'm going to use auto groups. So I have this in my custom menu, but that's also here under Tool. If you go down to, I don't want to do that. If you go down to polygroups, you can do auto groups. And that will just basically, that will give a separate group to the separate objects that are not attached to each other. Question, missed what was done previously. Did you bring a model into another software, rig it, animate it, and export the keyframes as models? Yeah, exactly. So I have an animated character in Maya, kind of just standard animation, and then my script goes through and takes the meshes from each frame and brings them into ZBrush as an FBX. All right, so we have this one, has its polygroups. I also want to add polygroups to the arms to make them easier to manipulate independently. I am going to be animating to camera, so basically anything visible from this side is what matters. I don't care about the other arm, so I'll probably just polygroup this one only. First of all, I do want to save. I'm just going to do a quick save because quick polygroup can crash occasionally. So let's do this. Make sure my brush is about the size and a little bit bigger than the arm. So I need to make it a little smaller, and there we go. So just polygroup that, and we'll do the same on each of these. So auto groups and quick polygroup this as well. Okay, we'll do another auto groups here. Auto groups and quick polygroup that arm. And again, this is a place where you can make a Z script if you wanted to auto group every frame. You can simply go to ZScript and record, and it will take kind of a record of what you're doing, very similarly to the output we saw in Maya when we were doing stuff. And it will make a script that is a record of what you did while you're recording. Then you can take those individual commands and kind of reorder them in a text editor, and that would be a good way to kind of do this more automatically. But this is a short animation, so I can do this by hand. So we'll do this here as well. Okay, so we have polygroups for each of the frames. That looks pretty good. And I'm just going to turn off polygroups now. So I'm going to go in with auto masking, turn on right here. I'm going to do mask by polygroups all the way to 100. So if you want to access that, that's under brush and auto masking. It's right here. Also made a Z script to toggle this. So you can toggle that on and off. So if I turn it on, I can move only this one part by itself. So I want to also turn off RGB intensity on this brush. So I need to make any changes to the pose. I can do that here. For example, if I want this hand to be a little bit higher on that, maybe I need that hand. And if I needed to move that hand, I should also polygroup it. It is a little bit visible. Polygroup, just add one for that. And then I can go back to Snakehook. And by the way, I use Snakehook for all of the move operations when I'm sculpting. I don't really use the move brush. Snakehook is nice because you can do like curved shapes with a single brush stroke. If I tried to do that with the move brush, it's just going to go kind of linear, right? It's kind of boring. I don't like that. It's not gestural. So I always use Snakehook. What do I use for the custom brush menu? So you can basically make your own menu by just going to Preferences, Configuration, Enable Customize, and then you can do Create New Menu, and then you can just drag stuff into it. So I just drag brushes from the brush palette over here into my custom menu. Same thing with my quick menu. With all the other operations, I just created another custom menu. So Create New Menu, and then just drag stuff into it as well. So it's really nice. You can speed your workflow up a lot just having those commonly used things directly under your mouse. You can just, again, set a hotkey for these with Control Alt and click. And then I just have 1 and 2 for each of these. Okay, so let's continue on here. So what do I need to change on this guy? So I want to have some smear frames. So the main things we're going to see will be this hand and arm kind of dropping down, and it's moving pretty quickly here. You can see like the spacing, it's pretty far away from the previous frame. So I want to have a bit of a smear. So we can just use the snake hook. We can do something like this, and that works fine. I do that sometimes, but something that is a really good tip for this is to use backface masking. So we go again to backface masking. Here is under auto masking. We can basically just control which side of this object we are dragging out. You can get some nice smear shapes that way. So I don't want to go too crazy with this because it will deform the object a little bit. But when things are moving pretty quickly, you can be pretty heavy-handed with it and it will still show up nicely. I mean, I could honestly turn this entire thing into like a blob on this frame. And if that frame is playing back pretty fast, it's still going to look really nice. So let's see, I'm just going to turn off backface for now. Let's see, I'll just add a little bit more of a shape to this. Thank you, Vishal. Appreciate it. Okay, so the mask as well, I want this to drag a little bit. All right, so probably being a little too conservative with this. I could go a little bit farther. And you can really push it as far as you want. Like, I don't want this to be cartoony, so I'm not going to have like crazy jiggling effects when things are moving quickly. But you can push things fairly far and it'll just look like motion blur. So that is a little bit too much of a jump there. So I'm just going to pull that back again with the snake hook. And I also want to make it look like his face is dragging away from the mask a little bit. So we'll do that. Also some corrections to just the forms here. So I'll fix that in a later stage with Sculptress, but I want to fix this part. So the neck is looking a little too rounded here. I'm just going to turn up focal shift. So we'll do that. There was a little bit of a pop, so I just need to correct that by hopping between keyframes. And that one's too curved still. This might seem tedious, but I think the result looks more organic when there's a little bit of jitter to this, because like muscles in the human body or in a creature as well, if you're animating a creature, they have a little bit of like jitteriness. They fire inconsistently. You know, you might have some fibers fire more than another. There's a little bit of jiggle oftentimes. If a muscle's like not tense, it has some like overlap. So you can get a lot of that with this technique. Also, this muscle here, this sternocleido muscle, should be straighter. So I'm just going to fix that a little bit as well. So I don't want to spend too much time on this phase, but I want to just correct some of these things. Again, it seems like this would be hard to stay on model, but in my experience, it really isn't when you're fixing these. So we want to make sure there's not too much of a jiggle on that. And it looks fine. I think that works. And it looks like there's some muscle activation too. Like you could even do things like this muscle back here, the teres major. When you pull the arm back, this arm is going farther towards the back of the body. It should be a little bit bigger. It's contracting. So let's go in with the inflate brush. The best muscle. Exactly. Okay, so yeah, a little bit more contraction on that muscle, and I think it'll come across in the final. Even if someone doesn't see that, you know, like, and they really notice it, I think it just comes across in the feeling of this being more organic. Okay, so, and there's a little bit more jiggle there than I want, so I'll just fix that. Pull that back a little bit. Okay. I might even want the mouth to close slightly at the end, so I can do that as well. I can like mask this. Mask lasso on that. Start to close the mouth a little bit. Also something to be aware of. Excuse me. Each frame has its own undo history, right? Because these are subtools. So that can be pretty powerful. You just have to be aware of how it works. All right, so I'll clear the mask, and again, the mouth has a little bit more action happening now. All right, so let me clean up this part. And see if there's anything else to do before I continue on. So I want to get kind of a stringy effect between the face and the mask. So I think we can probably get started on that pretty quickly here. Maybe I'll do a little bit more of a, well, I don't think I want this. Yeah, I don't want it to still be moving here on the final frames. So I'll clean that, and then I'll get it to be a little bit more extended on this frame. So it's kind of stretching out away from the mask. Maybe I'll also flatten the top of his head a little bit. So you get that overlap happening on his face. Feels like it's kind of tearing away from the mask. Also the chin, I want to pull this forward. Maybe not on that frame, but certainly here. So I want it to feel like it is, let's mask the body. I want to feel like this is tearing away from the mask. Something like that. And you could even go crazier with this. You can make like the nose extended out. What kind of references do you need to create animations like this? Or do you rely more on animation? So yeah, I had a few references for the original concept, like samurai masks, bionicle masks, also these African tribal masks. Apart from that, I don't have reference for the animation itself, like in terms of the motion. I did take some photos of me holding like a cardboard box to see what my hand would look like. I was surprised to realize that my hand was kind of like in this fist shape when I was holding a thin object. So that was helpful because I didn't know what pose the hand should take to hold something like this. So yeah, I record my own reference when I need it. But apart from that, yeah, it's just mostly imagination. Does your script let you export or update the FBXs in Maya to preview render quickly? Yeah, so at any point I can export this back to Maya. And then it's all set up with the keyframes and I can do a preview render. So that's a good question because that is something I do a lot. I want to make sure this is looking right with the lighting. So I'll show the export step a little bit later on and we can see how it looks in Maya. Okay, so looking pretty fleshy. I think we'll leave it there for now. Might actually get a little bit more of this muscle activation because I think it really does come across. That's a little bit bulky there. Okay, another good question. Are there any reliable plugins for Maya for rough rigging? If you can't rig for your life? I mean, that's a great question because anytime you can avoid that, it's a good idea. Again, like I said, a lot of my work as a technical artist is building auto rigging tools. So same idea. You don't want to have to rig from scratch. I personally don't rig from scratch on these animations. What I use is called Rapid Rig Modular. So it's a paid plugin, but it's really good. And that's what I'd use to build this rig. So you basically just place the points for each of the different joints, and then the rig will be generated and it builds out nice FK and IK chains for you. So it's called, let me just put this in the chat here and see if we can get it pasted. Rapid Rig Modular 3. That's what I would recommend for that. Some people like to use Advanced Skeleton. I personally haven't had as much luck with that. Okay, so, but any studio you work in is going to have their own tool that's custom for the studio. All right, so what we're going to do now, I think we're good to go on this stage. I want to start to add some of these tendrils between the mask and the face. So for that, I'm going to use a nice feature, I think it's relatively new, called Slime Bridge. We're basically going to mask one side on the head and one side on the mask. And then we can create some nice generated like tendrils between, and then we can resculpt them. Just basically makes a tube between one surface and the other. So you could do this by hand as well. You could kind of like pull out pieces of this, but we're going to use this. So if we go in here, I'm just going to switch my mask brush to mask pen. Go in and mask a little dot there on his head. Do another one right here. And when you're using Slime Bridge, you want to make sure it's basically like a bridge operation. It needs to have a really clean mask. So I'm just holding control and drawing this mask. I want it to have a pretty sharp border. And you want to make sure that it's really only on two surfaces. So like this isn't going to work if it has a mask on the other side of this piece. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I'm actually going to turn on backface masking. So we're going to turn that on, put the mask there, and you can see actually didn't work, unfortunately, in this case. Did that work? Oh yeah, I had backface masking on the wrong brush. So if I hold down Control, I'm in my masking brush. Now I turn on backface masking. I'm going to try that one more time because we want to make sure we have a clean mask for this. So right there, and now you can see that is clean. It's not on the other side. All right, so we'll put another mask right there on the forehead, and then we'll use our Slime Bridge. So I'm going to increase tension on this. And we get this kind of weird generated just branch. So that's pretty nice for just bridging this gap. That's probably too many. So I'm going to go in here with bridges, turn this down. Do that. And that's a little bit less. I think that's fine. I want one there. I'll probably put one as well for the nose. So we'll mask this part. Probably mask down on here. You want some flat surfaces for this to work on. Do that. See if it works. Okay, and I should have done a quick save. So I got lucky. I did my quick save now. We'll do one more on the chin. And we'll also put that here in the chin on the mask. So this will give me a good starting point to kind of resculpt these things. All right, so we'll do that. And we have these three kind of connections. Now, if you look at the polygroups, in each of these different sections has its own polygroup, and it's all trying to reach that chin. I don't really want them to all have separate polygroups, so what we're going to do is just hide these other pieces and do Control W to group these. And while I'm here, I can also paint them. So I want to paint these blue to get this to match this this mask here. So we're going to go in with our, I'm just going to grab one of my paint brushes. So you can turn any brush into a paintbrush just by turning on RGB and turning off Z-add. So this is just like a standard brush. And just turning on RGB. Press C to grab a color from a surface. So I'm grabbing that blue color. And then I'm going to go to my my slime bridges, and I'm going to paint them. So go in here with this, paint that. And I'm also using this, you could use this kind of standard brush to paint that solid color. But I also like to use, sometimes I have a different brush I made here with color spray. So it's in the stroke. You can choose color spray and you can control the color variance. So it's like how random the colors are going to get. Get some nice variation in the color that way. And that's how I like to paint these. I use this kind of like as a base coat as well when I'm painting full characters to get some variation. All right, so we're going to unhide and you can start to see what that looks like. It is looking a little bit light blue, so maybe I'll choose a slightly darker color. And since this is a poly group, I can go to my gizmo, just mask that, and I can paint that. Okay, so also what I want to do is get a little bit of, if I go in here, I want to get, yeah, the stream should be available later. And yeah, I know, I'm sorry, I'm going through it a little bit quickly, but it will be recorded. So if you want to look back. All right, so I'm just going to get a little bit of the blue from the mask on his face as well, because I want it to feel like there's like some residue left over. So I'm going to take that same color. I'm actually going to turn down the RGB intensity pretty low. And I'm using that color spray and make sure I don't have a mask. And I can start to get that blue color on his head as well. Start to see that. It's probably a little bit too low. I want to paint alpha. Okay, and I'll do that on this frame as well. So I want it to work here. And as it goes through. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for stopping by. Okay, so a little bit of blue here as well. And then I also want to make another bridge, so we'll do a few more of those. And I won't spend all my time here making slime bridges, but I want to add a few more of these. So put another mask on that, make sure it worked. So it looks like it's pretty good. Again, trying to keep these as clean as possible, so I don't want any kind of like soft edge on the mask. Do another slime bridge, and the higher you make the tension, the more it'll be like a straight line. And that works okay for me. Another one for the forehead. And I'll do a slight bridge there as well. And yeah, so we'll do that on, I think I'd like to get this. Yeah, I'll just add them to the last couple frames, I think, and then we'll look at another thing I can do to this. So do that, and then I want ones on this one as well. And you could kind of change up where you attach them. They don't have to be the same exact spot every time. I'm also going to add a bit of a gravity to them by resculpting them. So this one is like really straight. I'll just kind of make it droop once I get a poly group on it. Put another one here. Slime bridge again. One on the nose and one on the chin. Turn on perspective as well. So I can even connect that one to this part. I think I'll do it right here though. And if you select too many faces, it'll just tell you like it needs exactly 2 spots to connect to. All right, so we'll do one more, and then I'll show you how we can start to kind of modify this. One there. And put one on the nose and the chin as well. Kind of a weird effect on that one, but that's fine. A bit of randomness doesn't hurt. So we'll put one on the chin here. We should be good to go. Okay, so what I kind of want to do here is to make them droop. So I'm just going to, again, create a poly group for this. So I'm hiding poly grouping just this section. Do the same with this. So hiding all of these, I'm just doing Control Shift and clicking on different poly groups. Control W to group this. And I'll do this here as well. And that should work. So now that I have this, if I turn off my poly groups, I can start to make some of these droop as well. So I'll just mask these. So mask just this part. And I'll start to resculpt this a little bit. So make sure I'm just affecting only the center portion. I can also soften my mask if I want to. It'll affect his head slightly. And I'll do that on this one as well. Okay, so that's my starting place, and I think I'm going to kind of make some of these start to disappear with Sculptress. I'm going to kind of erase them, but this is a good place to start. And I want to also paint these, so just go through each of these, go with my paintbrush, should still have the blue color, and just kind of add to that pretty aggressively here. I'm not getting a lot of color variation. Yeah, I think my brush was just a little big. So do that. This one as well. So it's got kind of a crazy curve to it. I think I'll fix this. Pull it down in this direction. And if I'm smoothing this, it gets too small, I can always just fix this with inflate as well. So not quite as strong. Turn that down. Cook again. That one looks a little strange, so I'll just smooth it a bit more. Okay, so I think I'm missing, I need one more bridge here to the nose. That. And then we'll just have to group that. Okay, so we'll hide this And we'll just group that again. See our poly group. And then I just need to paint that one. And we'll move on to the next stage of this. We have about half an hour left of demo, and then we'll focus on Q&A. Okay, so going through here. We do need a little bit of color on his face, so I'm going to go ahead and paint that. And just using my kind of color spray brush. And it's really cool that with this technique that you can really just paint on the frames individually. I mean, I could completely change this guy's color because it's just vertex color per mesh. So this will be rendered as vertex color, in my case in Arnold, but every render engine allows for vertex colors. Okay, so looking pretty good. And what I want to do next is to go in with Sculptress and really start to merge these pieces together to really give it that kind of cohesive look. So to do that, there's a few different things you can do. So if I go in with just Sculptress, so for now, these objects are separate still, right? So like the finger is intersecting with the mask, but it's not actually attached to it. Just going to make these fingers a little closer together as well while I see this, because I want them to merge. But if I go in with Sculptress at this stage, these objects are not going to merge. And we're going to still have these kind of hard-edged CG intersections. And I really don't like that. That's part of what I'm trying to get away from. When objects are touching, they should really feel like they're touching. So I need to have these meshes to really connect in some way. And when I started doing this technique, I was originally using Dynamesh, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'll just do another quick save. So with Dynamesh, it does work, and it does a good job of combining everything. I can turn this up pretty high, but it will lose resolution. And sometimes I like to have the original kind of look of the mesh. I like to see some polygons here and there. And in this case, I did a super high resolution, so we're still seeing the polygons. This is honestly too many. Considering we have a separate mesh on every single frame, we want to have the resolution of each mesh to be relatively low. So this is too high. So if I go a bit lower with this, I'll just use the picker actually. So I'll just do picker from the hand for example, that will try to take the resolution of that. So we have a good resolution, about 200,000, but we are losing some detail. And I like to preserve the detail using Gizmo Union instead, if I can get away with it. So it doesn't always work as well as Dynamesh. Sometimes if the mesh is a little bit, has like some errors in it or whatever, overlapping faces, sometimes it doesn't like it, but it's a pretty nice tool. So we'll try to use that here. So I'm just going to make sure my objects are attached to each other, first of all. It'll give us a place to connect when we then sculpt with Sculptress. And just so I can show you what I mean, if I turn on Sculptress right now, make sure my mask by polygroups is off. If I try to blend these objects together, it doesn't do it, right? So the mask and the fingers are still separate, and it is changing the resolution, but it's not merging them. That's why we need to merge them. All right, so I'm just going to go in with the gizmo. If you go to the gear, you can do remesh by union. And it says the Boolean operation has succeeded, but there are some warnings. Usually that's not an issue. We can just go back to our sculpting brush, and usually it works. So if we go in and look at this, we can now see that we still have our polygroups, but we have these like new polygons connecting any places where these are touching. So this is more like a watertight mesh. So if I hide this, you can see that any place where the hand was touching the mask, it now has a hole. So it's actually connected to it. And if I go in with Sculptress, you can see that we now have a nice merging effect. So that's exactly what I want. My mesh looks the same. I don't have any Dynamesh artifacts, but we were able to get these nice blended effects. So I think I actually undid one too many times there. So I think my object is, again, separated. So let's just do that one more time. It is, use the gizmo, remesh by union, and then we're good to go. All right, so I'm going to do that on each frame. Do that here as well. Gizmo, the gear icon. I'll probably use the mouse for this. It's a little easier. And unfortunately, there's no menu item for this, so you really do have to go into the gizmo each time, which makes it not really possible to Z-script it either, unfortunately. So I'll just do this on each frame. Remesh. Here as well. Again, we will have Q&A session, but if you have any questions in the meantime, also feel free to ask. So let's do accept. See if that worked. So that one is not completed, so let me do that again. Remesh. So it doesn't like this one for some reason. So I'll show you a trick. Let's do this one as well. So we'll start with this. So if we go again to Gizmo, accept, we'll try this one more time, see if it works. And if it doesn't, we can do a fix to our mesh. So that is still not quite working. And I'm going to make sure that I don't have any masking on. So we can do a fix on our mesh. That's going to be under geometry and check mesh integrity. And then we can do fix mesh. Something to be aware of is it will get rid of our poly paint colors, or it'll kind of screw them up. So I'm just going to store the undo history here. So I'm holding down Control, clicking on that latest undo history, check and fix. You can see we have our colors are a little bit screwed up, and then we can just go to project and project history for color, and that will bring it back. We should be able to do our remesh by union now with our fixed mesh. And accept, and that did work now. So if you have any issues with your mesh, you can always do this. Just be aware it will mess with the colors. So I just, for the ease of using these, I have them up here. Check and fix. I need to make sure I have my undo history states, which is going to be this one. Store that. Go back here and project color. Let's see, let's do that one more time. So I'll just do a little bit of an edit. Store that. And then we'll do check mesh, fix mesh, and then we'll do a project history with color. So do that on any of these that didn't work. So I'm creating a lot of extra work for myself doing this with, let's do accept, doing this with Gizmo remesh, but I just like the way it looks. So you can certainly do this with Dynamesh as well, and it's a little easier. Remesh, see if that worked. Doesn't like that one either. So I'll just do a Dynamesh on the last couple frames just to show you how it works as well. So we'll make the Dynamesh resolution pretty high. We want to keep these tendrils. Dynamesh. Pick from this. See how that works. That looks all right. And we'll do that on this one as well. So I think the last one was like 500 resolution. Dynamesh there. All right, so we have a little bit of artifacts, but that's okay. We can clean those up with a small sculptor's brush. All right. So we have all of our meshes kind of combined, and now what I can do is go in and fix some things. So first of all, I don't like this crease, as I mentioned. So if I have Sculptress on, I can go in with clay buildup. I can use my smooth brush. I can turn down, first of all, I don't want to smooth the RGB because that would smooth my poly paint. I'll probably turn down the Z intensity on the smooth brush. You can see that cleans that up pretty quickly. Something that's interesting when you're using Sculptress is that you can actually turn off the Z intensity on smooth completely, and it will still have a bit of a smoothing effect just by changing the resolution. So that's something I like to use as well. In this case, I think I want a little bit of smoothing. I'll just clean that. So question about networking and standing out on job applications. I think we can get to that at the end. But yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so I'm just working on this smoothing. So that's just a fix there. And you can even go in and if I wanted to add like the lat muscle, and it's going to be stretching a little bit more as his arm comes down, I can go in and just sculpt that in. Literally just sculpt in the lat muscle like this. So especially right here, probably. And you don't want to go too crazy with it because it might really pop out, but a little bit of that is going to make a nice effect. And it kind of feels like it's layering over the other muscles and the bones underneath. And I would recommend just kind of being, if you do this technique, being kind of free form with it. That's what makes it interesting to look at. It doesn't have to be perfect. Also, if I want to, I could even use RGB on the clay buildup. So I could turn on a little bit of color, and then I can kind of get a recoloration of the surface as I'm sculpting. So yeah, I like to add stuff like that. And that stuff is a little harder to keep on model, but it's fine. It adds to the interest of it. So we'll also fix this. So I have a few other issues here. I have this weird intersection on the elbow. I can really simply just get this with the smooth brush. Smooth is turned down really low, mostly using the Sculptress kind of remesh feature for that. And then I can build up with my clay build up as well around that corner. Make sure that looks good. So here as well, get a little bit of a smooth, and you can see how quickly we get rid of that ugly CG intersection look between the objects. Also this part, this is really sharp. I don't want that. So I'm going to go in with my trim. It's actually probably too much. So let me turn down the intensity on the trim dynamic brush. Just get a little bit of a bigger brush so it's lower resolution. And oftentimes when I'm animating this way, just reducing the resolution makes my stuff look better if it needs to be smooth. So yeah, I don't need details on secondary things like this. Just want the main forms to look good. Okay, a little bit more of a merge. We have probably 10 or 15 minutes left here. Okay, so I want to, let's do one thing here before. I'm actually going to turn on my polygroup masking again just to fix this arm a little bit because it looks a little janky. But then as it goes into this a little farther, we're just going to start to merge it with the actual torso. So I have this intersection, it might seem like an error, but I really like how it looks once this is kind of like all sculpted on. So what we're going to do is start to build that, that interaction. So I have my clay buildup brush. I'm just going to turn off my mask by polygroups. I want to start to make a place where the kind of skin and fat here is being pushed by this. And you can see the color coming through. I don't really want that color, so I'm going to color pick again with C. So this can be pretty harsh to begin with, and then we'll smooth it down. We just want to get that interaction between these two pieces. That one's a little too far. So matching, so undo that, make sure it matches the previous frame. All right, so that's pretty good. And then I'll also fix this part. So even just a smooth will help a lot, but we can also go in with our clay buildup on that part as well. And this is probably the most fun part about this whole process to me, is just kind of coming up with these weird sculptural solutions to these problems, because I think it just adds a lot of interest to the animation. And if I was going to spend more time on this, I know I'm rushing to get this done in just like an hour, but if I was going to spend more time, I can really get in here and sculpt the details. Okay, so we can start to see that interaction between the two pieces. I also want to see it happening here. So this part right here as well. Use some Sculptress to fix that. Or I'm smoothing, sorry. So smoothing, but relying a lot on the resolution changing. It's probably a little too smooth. Undo that. And I also want to get the effect of the stuff being pushed around. So I'm going to use the snake hook as well. So a little bit more interaction happening there. So if I had more time, I would go in and really make sure all of these things are getting pushed around. But you can already see how much that's adding to that effect. And then once I have that, I can go in and start to smooth it back. So it's not quite as intense. I think I'll turn down the intensity on this brush as well. Get a little bit more of a fall off. All right. And it looks a little bit, I don't know, I think it just needs a little bit more interaction on that spot. Okay, so at this stage, we're getting pretty close. Probably need a little bit more. Oh yeah, I wanted to make some of these start to break off. So as they get longer, some of them should snap. Imagine this is like, I don't know, like goo or something. It's whatever you think this is, it is. I don't really know exactly what this material is that's separating between the mask and the face, but it's kind of stringy, some kind of like goo. So, but I don't want to break all of them. But if I have like a fairly low resolution on my Sculptress, and then I just go in with the smooth brush, pretty small brush, it's going to start to separate those. And then I just want to look for consistency where these were separated. So if one of them started to break, it should continue breaking on the next frame. So for example, this one, that looks pretty consistent, and then that kind of snapped. I'm going to get rid of that. There's a question about scripting classes online if you don't live in the US. My classes aren't taught online specifically, but there are some at Gnomon. I think Bo and Kenneth can probably answer that question better than I can. Let's see. Okay, let's see. So we want to continue this kind of snapping effect. Used to it collapsing in on itself. Yeah, so if you use this smooth brush without Sculptress, it would just get really small. So Sculptress avoids that by just anything that's too small to be considered part of the volume, it just disappears. So I want this one is the last frame. It really should have fewer of these connected still. So I'm going to go in and kind of separate a little bit more of these. And obviously I could spend a very long time on this, but I don't want to spend forever on this stage. So let's see, what else do I need to do just to clean this up? So we got some weird kind of intersections here. All right, so on this one, I don't want to use Sculptress. I don't want to distort that form, but I don't want to distort the polygons, but I want this to kind of be extended out a little bit. I think I might even use my polygrips, which I actually don't have anymore because I did use Dynamesh. That's all right. Okay, so trying to kind of wrap this up now, I want to just look at any places where I see stuff that looks still really CG, and mostly I'm seeing like some of the topology here. And I can make the surface feel more alive, again, by just going in with Sculptress on. using the smooth brush and 0 intensity. So if I go through this, I can kind of just remesh wherever I brush, and I want to be careful because I don't want it to completely destroy the shapes, but it's going to give a nice kind of unified effect, and we can kind of reduce some of this polygon look. And you could certainly do this with a higher res geometry to begin with as well. And in the camera view, this will be cut off. He doesn't have legs, but that's fine. We're not going to see that. So go through, kind of use your judgment. And the thing I do like about this is rather than relying on something like Dynamesh to just change the resolution on the entire thing all at once, that's kind of a computer way of handling it, and it looks less handmade. So going through and kind of being selective with where you're brushing this resolution gives a nice effect. So again, this is why I kind of like to use Gizmo Union to join the objects. Go through here. And this sculptress on these. Any place where I'm still seeing that geometry. And I don't mind if a little bit of it comes through. Kind of has an interesting planar look to it, but I just don't want it to feel like it's unfinished. And in just a minute here, I'll go ahead and do it and export to Maya so we can see it there. Also, if things are moving quickly, I tend to reduce the resolution a lot more on those. So like this one's starting to move pretty fast. Make the hand more distorted. Same here. And like even like that, like I don't mind going pretty intense with it, because as you play back, you don't even really see that. But it gives, again, more of a dynamic kind of feel to the animation overall. Okay, so cleaning this as well. Am I using Maya or 3ds Max for box modeling? I'm using ZBrush for the whole character creation step. For like hard surface modeling, I think Maya is really the standard. But yeah, I'm using ZBrush to do the character modeling, and then I just do a free topology in Maya using Quadra. So let me just close that. I think I want to fix the jaw shape maybe a little bit as well. And then pretty soon here, we're going to go to Maya. Is it more so it runs better, or just a flavor thing with the resolution being lowered? I think it's both for me. So it does run better if you have a lower poly count. So right now, for all of my subtools together, I have 1.5 million. And that's totally fine for rendering in Maya. But if you have a longer animation, anytime you can, you want to reduce the resolution. But it does also give it an interesting kind of style in my view. So that one looks a little too light blue. I don't know why that happens. I'm just being a little bit obsessive about the color here. I don't know why that got so light. Let's see what happened here. It's going to be even lighter. I guess the mask is very light on this. So let me actually manually reduce the color. Have any favorite claymation films, games? Here we go. I think it's because my lights are so bright in the scene. That's why it's kind of recoloring that in a weird way. Chicken Run and Pinocchio. Yeah, I still need to watch Pinocchio. And I really liked Wallace and Gromit. It's probably claymation I grew up with. I think Chicken Run is probably made by the same people. I'm not sure. Okay, so let's see what else there is to do. We have only a few more minutes here. I want to get this into Maya in a second here. So anything else that pops out to me as I'm flipping through? Go in with smooth brush, sculptress. What else? Also, Phil Tippett's stop motion work is amazing, like in the original Star Wars movies. All right. Also for hand-drawn animation, Bill Plimpton, you got to check out his stuff. It's amazing. All right, so that looks pretty good. Let's make sure there aren't any other glaring polygons, and then we'll export this. So the next step, again, you could do this throughout the process to check this in a preview render, as people were saying. But we just want to take all these frames. We're going to export these back as an FBX. So we'll put this into our Ultra Clay folder as from ZBrush. Place that. So all of the subtools. So it should be putting these all out into one single file with all of the different subtools as different named meshes. So now if we go back to Maya, we have, again, this is just our default kind of rigged character. I'm going to go ahead and hide the controls. I'm just going to hide everything but meshes. And then if I take my Ultra Clay tool and then just do import, all it's really doing is importing the FBX, taking each mesh and assigning keyframes to it. But to make things more efficient, I have kind of a second version of Maya running in the background. It's Maya standalone. And that's kind of a more advanced technique that I get into in the more advanced scripting class. But that's really just to make this more efficient so I can reference in the file. So that's right now in the background, it's doing the import. Now it's loading in the reference and sending keyframes. And now we have our actual sculpted version here in Maya, sorry. So if we go through here, we can see all of those frames. And Maya isn't always that happy with high resolution meshes. So you're not always going to get like full playback speed. It looks like it's working pretty well in this case. So yeah, looks pretty good. And if you wanted to do a render, we can just do that as well. I don't know if the render will be good for the live stream, so I'm probably not going to run that, but I'll show you what it looks like again. So one final thing I'm going to do here is just retime this. So again, just like we did with the simple kind of squash and stretch example, each of these frames is just a mesh. It has an on and off keyframe for each of the different frames on the timeline. And if we wanted to, you could go and move these around manually, but it's a lot nicer if we just do this with a script. So I have this shorten and lengthen for retiming this. So if I go in, I'm going to add a few more frames to my timeline. You put this up to like 25. Probably also change this to 12 FPS. So I'm going to go in here, make sure I keep keys at current frames. And change that to 12. Select 1. All right, so make sure this still works. Looks like it does. Now I can go in and make this first pose be on 3s. So I'll do lengthen twice. Go to the second one, make that be on maybe 3s as well. This one will be on 2s. This one is fast, so it should be on 1s. This one may maybe be on 2s as well. And this last one we can just leave alone. Okay, so you can see that it looks a lot better now with the timing. It's slow to begin with, it starts to go faster, and then it slows out again at the end. That's kind of just a basic animation principle. So let's get a little bit more contrast on this, and this is kind of the final result. So again, looking at my example I made before, this is how the individual frames looked. For rendering, It's just set up in Arnold. I have some rim lights. I have an environment light for fill. And then I also have some subsurface scattering on this. We can see some of that gooiness on the tendrils. Yeah, so you can still see some polygons here on this. I could have cleaned that up a little bit. I think we cleaned that a little bit more in my demo. Yeah, that's the basic idea. And here is, again, the GIF that was rendered in Arnold. I'm playing back. See that light coming through from behind. So that's pretty much it. And yeah, I'd love to see if there's any other questions. You can answer those this time as well. I know I did have a question a bit farther back that I haven't answered yet. Back to this. Okay, so let's see. Let me answer that one about. Yeah, and if Bo, if you want to hop in on that as well, so just asking about like networking culture and standing out on job applications.
Yes. Well, there was the one question recently here about working on a longer form project.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I missed
that.
that.
See if this work.
Yeah. So I mean, I always have longer films using this technique in the works. I have used a lot of these shorter animations for gallery installations. So kind of a mix of having the animations projected on the wall and then also having 3D printed versions of like the sculpted frames as sculptures. So that's mostly what I've been working on recently with this technique. But yeah, certainly in the works for the future, I do want to do some longer form stuff.
Oh, very good. And Julian gave you an endorsement for the class. Thanks, Julian.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Let's see. The one question back there, advice in terms of networking culture and standing out on the job, but also without burning out artistically. That's kind of two separate things. There's the networking and then there's the burning out. How about this? I can start with an answer, and Alex, you can kind of pick up on this. I would almost answer those the same. Burning out artistically. I think if you are able to have your voice as an artist come through, that helps. So even if you're working at a studio where most of your time is spent with doing games or films or things that may not be part of your artistic vision, if you can have that artistic voice, that keeps you going forward and keeps you engaged with this medium, and you have a reason for continuing to work. But also having a voice as an artist helps keep you interesting to other people, to employers, those in your network, to have your own voice. So things like having this claymation process that's very unique. This is a way that you're able to stand out with this kind of work. And I would imagine it keeps you from burning out because you've got this unique process that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. So, I mean, because like, we all get into it because we love making art or making video games or making film, and trying to stay connected with that I think is really important. So remaining connected to your inspiration, doing personal projects. Again, like I said, like I was inspired by Bionicles just from when I was a young child. But just bringing your original interests through in your work, and also making sure you do set time aside for personal work, even when you're working in a studio. For me, I enjoy studio work most when I feel like I'm also just helping the other people on my team. And that was something that kind of surprised me about technical art, because I wouldn't have guessed initially that I'd want to do technical art as a career. But I really enjoy like solving problems for artists. And for me, anytime I was doing that, I'd never get burned out. So yeah, I guess Um, try to enjoy the collaborative process as well, and yeah, solving problems for people, because I think the interaction part is a big part of what makes it really enjoyable.
Yeah, absolutely. People often ask, what's your favorite film? And I think less of the final product as much as the process.
Absolutely.
And the best moments in production have been the ones where everyone was just working together like this well-oiled machine, that everyone, you know your colleagues and know how to best support them and prop them up so they can do their best work, and they're doing the same for you. And also those sort of magical moments where every artist feels like you're contributing something personally, not just I'm taking notes, I don't know what I'm doing here, but you're actually contributing. Um, that's when you have magic in a bottle and get those really great, the best results come out of those moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
And also, I
cool.
guess they mentioned networking. I just wanted to go back to that a little bit. I would say don't sleep on using social media, because especially for me, Instagram is the best one, but even TikTok, just and post your work frequently. So I would treat things like ArtStation as a portfolio. So you're putting your best work there, right? This is something you send as a link to recruiters, or in interviews. But social media should be more like posting your work as you make it, behind the scenes kind of work in progress. If you can make a time lapse, that's awesome as well. If you can voice over what you're doing. I've just had so many connections that have come about through social media. So specifically through Reels. Yeah, and I've had a lot of students who have done that and have gotten work that way as well. So yeah.
And if you have the luxury of being in a place like Los Angeles, and there's other networking events, like Gnomon has all of we have the online events, but we also have on-stage events on campus. And we also host things like Houdini Hive and VES events. So I think you can do other industry in-person events beyond the social media kind of contacts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, building
Great.
connections in person is critical as well.
There was King Sea Dog 1 has random question. Is that importer in Maya for the object layers and ZBrush available? That's your script.
So yeah, so if you want to actually import layers, so if those are like layers in ZBrush and you want to import those into Maya as blend shapes, there is a tool. Let me just make sure I'm getting the right information here. I think it's called, Maya Blend Shapes. So Z plugin Maya Blend Shapes, that's built into ZBrush, and that's really great, especially if you're doing facial rigging. That's something I've done as a tech artist. So sculpting a bunch of different facial expression shapes in ZBrush and then bringing them in as blend shapes. That's what you should use. So that is for layers. But if you want to do separate subtools like I'm doing, that is my Ultra Clay script. So yeah, I sell that on Gumroad.
Cool, very good. We have any other questions from the chat? All right, give you guys a moment if you have a question. I don't want to just cut us off here. So I've been keeping track of the numbers. Thank you all on Twitch and on YouTube for joining us on the live stream. And these are going to be archived on our channels after the fact, so you can check those out if you missed something along the way. When an artist is learning new software or a new process, do you recommend using tools and scripting as you go?
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, I would say start out by learning how to do things by hand. So like an example, in the example of rigging a character, if you have that as like a primary interest, if you want to be a character rigger, you should do it by hand, and you should do all of those steps kind of the hard way, and really understand how it works. And then kind of from there, you can start scripting. And I emphasize a lot in my class that you should understand the steps manually before you should ever touch the code. and really just write those down, even on a piece of paper. And then you're in the best place possible to then automate it. So yeah, I would start out with hands-on, just tutorials, or if you're in classes, doing, just step by step, and then from there you can kind of see what to automate once you get your workflow set up.
Yeah, when I've taught the intro rigging class at Gnomon, I intentionally did not use a lot of scripting to automate things. You were mentioning the auto rigging. Something as simple as, hey, you can lay out joints and orient them. But the thing is, like you were saying, you have to know the process. You have to know what are all the variables involved when doing this, so know the process intimately. It may seem like I'm kind of being cruel in the class, I was like, hey, lay your joints out and orient them manually. But you have to kind of go through the process to appreciate what is involved in doing that, so your script can adapt to all the situations that you've encountered. So yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Because also I think that's important to not see these technical tools as the magic box that makes stuff happen. This is, I think, lovely to see your process, because you're seeing both, hey, here's my Python script, but this is allowing me to be an artist and scrub the clay around and really be artistic with this. And it's not like, here's the button that makes it look good. Here is the button that automates things so I can spend my time making it look good and bringing my own creative vision to this. So there you go, Daniel. Let's see. All right, other questions here? Anything else from our audience? All right, then I'm gonna close this up here. I really want to thank you, Alex, for this. Always cool to see this. Always great to looking for the magic look good. But yeah, good luck, Julian. You're not gonna find it. Make the magic look good button. Good luck with that. So there you go. There's that magic unicorn. You're not gonna get. Post advice, make a demo reel button doesn't work. Yeah, that doesn't work. That's sorry. If you're going to be an artist, you got to work on being an artist. If it were a push a button, then Gnomon wouldn't have to exist. It takes time to learn the craft.
And even starting with the clay sculpting classes, for example, is so important. With working with your hands with real materials.
Yeah. If anybody comes to campus, come by my office. I have my old 8mm childhood camera that would take single frames. I did claymation in my bedroom as a child. So come by my office. You can see my 8mm camera from back in the day.
Yeah, I want to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, guys, so much. Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the insightful, inspiring work. Really appreciate it. And thank you all for joining us on the stream. Any questions you have we didn't get answered this evening, hit us up on our website. Hit up admissions@gnomon.edu. There's other contacts on our website, gnomon.edu. Check it out. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks, everybody. Thank you, Alex. And good night, everybody.
Thanks so much, Bo.
Thanks.